Hello, my name is Casey and welcome to Batman Weekly, where I'll be reading and reviewing one Batman comic each week, starting from his first appearance all the way back in 1939. If you are watching this video, you probably have some idea who Batman is. It's hard to not at least know who the man is under the mask. In case you don't, spoiler alert, it is the Playboy billionaire Bruce Wayne. Maybe some information that isn't so common. Batman was created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. Now, this is a controversial statement, given that it is argued that the idea of the Batman we love today was from the mind of Bill Finger, who unfortunately died without a penny to his name. There is a really good documentary called Batman and Bill detailing this story. I would highly recommend giving this a watch for a more detailed look at this topic. Batman was first introduced in the pages of Detective Comics number 27 on May 5th, 1939 in a story titled The Case of the Criminal Syndicate. This issue also brings us the first appearance of Commissioner Gordon, showing that Batman and the Commissioner have been working together from the very beginning. Now that you have a general idea of who Batman is and what's to come in this issue, let's just jump right into it. Before we even crack open the issue, we can see this extremely iconic cover photo that artists still to this day will recreate. It just highlights Batman's physical strengths, his braveness, and the lengths he will go to defeat his enemies. He will literally swing above rooftops if that means bringing down a goon. We first open up on the first panel, giving us a silhouette of the Caped Crusader. It's a very ominous look, no doubt. From there, we see the Commissioner and his young socialite friend, Bruce Wayne, smoking and talking about the current events. Bruce seems uninterested with what's going on, while Gordon is getting a phone call about a murder. Bruce tags along with the police to check it out. Kind of weird for a young socialite to hang out with a high-ranking police officer and then tag along with them to a murder. Bruce must be very bored. They arrive to the crime scene and start questioning the sole suspect, young Lambert, the son of the recently deceased Lambert, who also is known as the Chemical King. Still peculiar, Bruce is present for the questioning. Has to just be because of that boredom. Young Lambert details what he saw. He saw his father dead with a knife in his back and his safe open. For some reason, young Lambert thought it was a good idea to touch the murder weapon. He claims he did this so he could hear his father's dying words. Old Lambert's dying words were about a contract of some kind that was stolen. A mystery is now afoot. Young Lambert mentions that there were only 3 other people that could be potential suspects. Their names? Stephen Crane, Paul Rogers, and Alfred Stryker. These 3 were former business partners of old Lambert. At that moment, Gordon receives a phone call from a Stephen Crane. Mr. Crane says old Lambert called him, talking about how he received an anonymous threat on his life, and that Mr. Crane has now received the same. Gordon tells Mr. Crane to stay put, and they will be there to offer protection. Bruce lets the Commissioner know he's about to head out, as if anyone would care about the comings and goings of a billionaire. From there, we see Stephen Crane get murdered by a home invader. Mr. Crane was shot and also had some sort of contract stolen from him. The crook is then seen climbing onto the roof, meeting with their partner in crime, when they notice the menacing Batman. He makes quick work of these criminals, punching and grappling them until they aren't able to fight back anymore. He picks up the documents that the criminals stole. At that point, the Commissioner pulls up, instantly shouting for his men to capture the Batman. Gordon then speaks with who seems to be the butler of Mr. Crane. The butler tells Gordon Mr. Crane has been murdered. Commissioner Gordon realizes there are only 2 other people left on the list. Batman has also realized this and uncharacteristically gives a smile and speeds off in his red vehicle? Not weird at all. So the iconic Batmobile still hasn't been created, so for now, Batman has to use his stick out like a sore thumb red car. Paul Rogers, one of the 4 partners, is seen trying to speak with Alfred Stryker after finding out about Lambert's death. Stryker's assistant, Jennings, bonks Rogers on the head, incapacitating him and tying him up. Then, in classic villain fashion, Jennings begins explaining exactly what he's going to do to Rogers. Basically, Rogers is about to get gassed. In another classic villain move, Jennings just leaves before the deed can be carried out, allowing Batman to swoop in and save the day. Jennings hears the commotion and returns only to be quickly dispatched by Batman. Alfred Stryker strolls in, somehow not noticing Batman, and asks Rogers what happened. Turns out, Stryker is the main villain of this story, as we see him try and stab Rogers. Batman, of course, stops Stryker and saves Rogers again. At this point, Batman details what was really going on and the reasoning behind the murders. It turns out, Stryker did not want to pay his partners the money he promised them. He felt just murdering them and taking the contracts would solve his issues, not while Batman is around. As Batman is explaining how he solved the crime, Stryker gets loose from Batman's grip and tries to shoot him. Batman hits him with the right hook, knocking Stryker into a vat of acid. Stryker was falling into acid before it was cool. Batman then says a line that is extremely uncharacteristic. He says, "A fitting in for his kind." Modern-day Batman would do anything to prevent the death of anyone, so to see him saying this shows how dark the writers really wanted to make this character. After he congratulates himself for murder, he leaves without Rogers even noticing. This type of behavior will become a Batman staple in future years. It's the next day now, and Bruce is again speaking with Commissioner Gordon about Batman's escapades. Bruce doesn't believe anything Gordon is saying, then just leaves. Gordon talks out loud to himself about how boring of a life Bruce lives. Little does he know, Bruce Wayne is the Batman. Now that the issue is completed, let me give you my thoughts on this. It's cool to see the staples of present Batman showing up in this first issue. Things like disappearing when no one is looking, and the fact that Gordon is there. On the downside, this is a product of its time. We are used to large explosions and flamboyant villains. Mobsters and gang members were more interesting to people back then. In my opinion, it makes the comic a little boring. That being said, I give this 4 batarangs out of 5. Yeah, sure, I guess that's my rating. Anyways, this issue allows the reader to get an idea of who Batman is, even though there are still some kind of slow parts. And that is the completion of the first issue, but the beginning of an adventure I will literally never run out of issues to talk about. Really appreciate all for watching. I hope to see you all next week, where we talk about how Batman gets out of being accused of being a jewel thief. I will see you then on the same Bat channel, the same Bat place.